The Shabbat before Purim is known as Shabbat Zachor, after the special maftir from Devarim, which instructs us to remember and not forget the attack by Amalek. It is considered a Torah requirement to attend a reading of this maftir in a minyan, as it fulfills the remembering and not forgetting. Attending almost all other Torah readings is established in custom. The juxtaposition of Shabbat Zachor with Purim makes the mitzvah fulfillment timing poignant. Nonetheless, one might imagine that the annual laning at the end of Parshat Ki Teitzei could and would achieve the same objective. If so, what's the need for a designated extra Shabbat Zachor? One possible answer is that in a leap year, more than 20 calendar months elapse between two readings of any one parsha. It is the combination of Shabbat Zachor and Ki Teitzei that achieves at least one reading in every calendar year. Some opinions posit that even if one did not manage to attend on Shabbat Zachor, the Torah reading before the Megillah on Purim morning ought to be adequate. This reading, after all, is the narration of Amalek's attack after Bnei Yisrael crossed the sea, and it is this reading that describes the famous victory over Amalek, with the Israelites winning when Moshe's hands were supported by Joshua and Hur. Given that these psukim from the end of Parshat Beshalach also reference the memory of Amalek, one must wonder why Chazal chose to build Zachor around the Ki Teitzei verses. It is counterintuitive that the memorialization is formulated around verses set 40 years after the event. Perhaps the answer is found in two significant distinctions. The narrative of the Exodus verses, which anticipates an eternal struggle with Amalek, makes no mention of not forgetting. Secondly, only the Ki Teitzei reading spells out Amalek's particular evil. He made a sneak and opportunistic, unprovoked attack on the weak and vulnerable, capitalizing on Israel's own exhaustion. Furthermore, Amalek was not God-fearing. In his Sefer Mitzvot and in the Mishnah Torah, Rambam emphasizes the verbal articulation of these vices as essential to remembering Amalek, and that making mention of them annually steels our hearts against the passage of time, diminishing our resolve. A mandate for the generational hatred of an entire nation sits ill, and I think that this Purim in particular we have reason to be sensitive. To my mind, the nuances of the Ki Teitzei reading are both significant and instructive in this regard. Shabbat Zachor does not demand that we hate a people. On the contrary, it admonishes us to identify, recall, and vilify a pattern of adversity. We should remember that there is a particular evil. The hallmark of this evil is a sneak, opportunistic, unprovoked assault on the weak and vulnerable, with an assailant who demonstrates a depravity incompatible with being God-fearing. Shabbat Zachor is not about a stubborn fixation on a historic enemy or an Amalek gene. The Torah reading hones in on Amalek's qualities, which must be called out and repudiated. This year, we're overwhelmed by the pain of communities who've suffered slaughter, entire households murdered, of rapes, of violations of the elderly and of babies, with anguish for the hostages and their families. On Shabbat Zachor there can and should be no escaping the acknowledgement of evil and the calling to mind of each incident and every victim. As I understand the verses of our Torah reading, we must remember and not forget, must hold to account and not excuse the evil of sneak attack perpetrators. In remembering we must respond demonstrably as God-fearing and principled, as mindful of the innocent and the vulnerable, for they too are victims of tragic circumstances and the evil of the modern Amalek. This Purim, may Hashem, who wrought miracles in the past, bring us from darkness to light, from oppression to freedom, and from fear of godless enemies to a secure peace in our neighborhoods and with our neighbors. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, a Purim Sameach, Shalom al Kol Yisrael.